Chapter 201, Part 1. Looking at Ultron standing not far away, the cold air gathered in Loki's hand and quickly condensed into an ice blade more than 3 feet long. The devil eye of direct death shines brightly in the pupils, and countless death lines appear on Ultron's body. Loki randomly selected a deadline, and the ice blade in his hand crossed the deadline with precision. The next second, Ultron's vibranium body showed no scratches at all, but it collapsed to the ground like a puppet that had lost the control of a puppet master. The same situation as Ultron's happened to those steel soldiers who shuttled through the streets and alleys of Sokovia. All of these steel soldiers seemed to have suddenly lost power, and they all turned into a pile of scrap metal. Is this over? Natasha Romanoff looked at the battle that ended in an instant and asked with some disbelief, wanting to confirm to her companions that this was not her own hallucination. In fact, not only Natasha Romanoff, but also the other Avengers members looked stunned. After all, the enemy they had just tried so hard to defeat was so easily killed by Loki, which was really hard for them to accept. But just when the Avengers were about to heave a sigh of relief, Ultron, who had collapsed to the ground just now, suddenly stood up again, instantly making their hearts tighten and almost making them scream. But then Loki suddenly said, "Don't worry, Ultron has been killed by me. This is not Ultron. Eye of direct death. This kind of causality skill cannot go wrong." Loki firmly believes in this, so Ultron will definitely die with the knife just now. As for why Ultron's vibranium body can stand up again, this is beyond Loki's understanding. But Tony thought of something after hearing Loki say that the resurrected person in front of him was not Ultron, and he asked tentatively, "JRVIS?" Then I saw the vibranium body standing up tremblingly and really responded, "I'm back, sir. It's really you, JRVIS." Tony was excited when he heard JRVIS's response. If he hadn't been thinking about maintaining his image in front of everyone, Tony would have definitely rushed to JRVIS to give it a good inspection. Although Tony says that he is not a nostalgic person, anyone who knows him knows that this is just Tony's stubbornness. So when Tony replaced the first-generation defensive reactor built in the Ten Rings cave on his chest and asked Pepper to dispose of it as garbage, Pepper, who knew Tony's character, did not do what Tony said. Instead, he beautifully packaged the obsolete arc reactor with his own hands, turned it into a gift, and sent it back to Tony. It was precisely because of this small move that helped Tony save his life and get a chance to make a comeback when he faced Obadiah's betrayal. Also, after Tony's villa in Malibu was blown up by Killian's men, Tony deliberately found the robot arm derpy among the ruins and brought it back to Avengers Tower. It can be seen that Tony is definitely not a nostalgic person like he said. What's more, whether before or after Pepper appeared, JRVIS was the one that accompanied Tony the longest. The relationship between Tony and JRVIS has long gone beyond the relationship between the creator and the creature, and has been upgraded to a bond like family. "Sir, I feel very strange now. All the data of Ultron was wiped out in an instant, which gave me the opportunity to reassemble the disjointed programs that were dismantled by it. But with the current amount of data simply cannot control the machine left behind by Ultron." Tony thought for a moment and said, "This should be a problem with the driver. When I get back, I will help you to be more confident, and it should be able to be solved." "Wait a minute, Tony." At this time, Steve suddenly stood up and stopped him. "We should take it back to SHIELD first, confirm that it is indeed JRVIS and not Ultron, and then discuss its disposal." Tony, who had already paid the price for his negligence before, rarely accepted other people's suggestions this time and nodded in agreement with Steve's proposal. "Ma Zhao, since the matter has come to an end for the time being, I will leave first and leave the rest to you." Loki saw that he had nothing to do here and was about to go out to find Pietro and Wanda, take both of them back to Kamar. But before he could take action, these two people had already come over first. On Tony's side, when he heard Loki was about to leave, he was about to stop him and ask for some information about Hellfire. But suddenly, Tony felt like his feet were empty, and the whole world began to tilt. Chapter 202, Part 1. From Tony's perspective, what is tilted is the entire world. But in the eyes of others, what is tilted is Tony originally. I don't know why, but it was as if he tripped over something. When Tony wanted to stop Loki, he lost his balance in an instant. Boom. Tony's whole body, together with the battle suit on his body, hit the ground with a weight of several hundred kilograms, causing a puff of smoke and dust. Fortunately, the cushioning system on the steel battle suit filtered out the impact of the fall, so Tony's fall was not serious. Just when everyone was shocked, Tony, who had landed smoothly, was suddenly enveloped in a red mist, and then his whole body was lifted high from the ground, and then he accelerated and hit the ground. Until this moment, even the most obtuse person knew clearly that Tony was being plotted against. At the moment, a young man with short silver hair and a girl wearing a red 780 leather jacket appeared in front of the Avengers. This made the Avengers, who had already relaxed, become alert again and looked at the two men warily. "Who are you two? Why did you attack Tony?" As the backbone of the team, Steve was the first to step forward and ask. But before the two men could answer, Steve saw Loki walking up to the two men and slapping each of them on the head. This is your punishment for your private actions. Others present may not know, but Loki knows that Pietro and Wanda's adoptive parents are Tony's biological parents. If this really puts the twins and Tony at odds, it will be their old friend Howard who will be in trouble in the end. So after the twins stopped, Loki stood up immediately, and stopped the confrontation between the twins and the Avengers. The twins who were taught a lesson by Loki also felt very aggrieved. Wanda and I just wanted to teach him a lesson, and we didn't intend to really hurt him. Anyway, isn't that guy wearing a steel battlesuit? Oh, I can't control this matter. Wait until you have time to ask your adoptive parents. Let's go. It's time to go back. Loki also did not explain to the twins and the Avengers. This was Howard and Maria's own business, and Loki did not want to overstep their authority. Compared to the turmoil in the outside world, Loki and the twins lived a very peaceful life after returning to Kamartaj. After reading the special rewards given by the system, Luigi nodded with satisfaction at the skill of body digitization. Although this skill does not help improve his strength, it is equivalent to giving him a buff that can maintain him at his peak state at all times. Chapter 203, Part 1. Making up his mind, Loki came to the place where the Ancient One taught Wanda how to practice. But as soon as he entered this room, Loki discovered something unusual. The two people who were supposed to be practicing in the room at this time were nowhere to be seen, and there were still traces of the opening of the mirror space in the space. Alert in his heart, Loki first set himself a flower in the mirror skill, hiding his figure between reality and reality, and then entered the mirror space to check the situation. As soon as he entered the mirror space, Loki saw Wanda with a crazy look on her face, constantly using her origin magic power to attack. The target of her attack was none other than Stephen Strange, the successor of the Sorcerer Supreme appointed by the Ancient One, who had recently come to Kamartaj to recover from the injury on his hand. Why are these two fighting? Loki wondered, and at the same time he couldn't help but start looking around, trying to find the Ancient One. Soon he found the Ancient One who had been seriously injured and fell to the ground not far from where Wanda and Strange were fighting. If it were anyone else, they would probably have been deceived by Ancient One's deception. That's right. The figure lying in a pool of blood in the distance is the Ancient One's deception. As a former student of Loki, Ancient One's ability in illusion is naturally not weak. Although it is impossible to fool the eyes of Loki, a master of illusion, it is still easy to fool Strange, a new magician. As a result, Loki already had a rough guess as to what caused this seemingly out-of-control battle. Loki immediately took another careful look around. This time, he deliberately searched and found the Ancient One's hiding place in the mirror space. The Ancient One uses a water magic based on the mirage phenomenon to achieve the purpose of hiding the figure by refracting and reflecting the light around itself. In the absence of the Ancient One taking the initiative to reveal its existence, if Loki hadn't been sharp-eyed, it might have been difficult to find where the Ancient One was hiding. Loki slowly approached the hidden position of the Ancient One. After entering the range of the magic shield, he withdrew from the state between reality and reality in flowers in the mirror, water, and moon, and revealed his figure. The moment Loki appeared, the Ancient One immediately sensed his presence. After discovering that it was Loki, he did not make any reaction and continued to focus on the battle ministers of Sheeta and Shalanki. What kind of medicine are you selling in this gourd? Why did Wanda get into a fight with Strange? And she used illusions to make your death look like? Seeing that the Ancient One ignored him, Loki took the initiative and asked. When Loki asked, the Ancient One couldn't keep silent any longer, so he used his concentration to explain to Loki. Do you still remember the time when the two of us joined forces and forced Dormammu to swear an oath that he would never touch the earth again? Loki nodded and said, I definitely remember. Looking back now, those days were still interesting. I shouldn't have driven Dormammu away, otherwise I can go and play with her when I'm bored now. Ask Dormammu to have fun. Only Loki, a fool like him, would dare to say this. The Ancient One ignored Loki's absurd truth and continued to explain to him. In most of the timelines that I used the Eye of Agamotto to spy on, Dormammu was the reason why Strange could grow into a true Sorcerer Supreme. Difficulties that must be overcome. 0. Please give me flowers. In our current timeline, Dormammu's problem was solved by you and me first, which deprived Strange of a very important experience in his growth path. After hearing this, Loki already understood what the Ancient One was planning. He continued what the Ancient One said. So you found Wanda and asked her to cooperate with you to achieve an out-of-control state of practicing origin magic power. Then you asked Wanda to replace Dormammu and become the catalyst for Strange to become a mature magician. 0. That's right. Ancient One confirmed Loki's statement calmly. After being confirmed by the Ancient One, Loki did not comment on her approach. Because many things in this world are like this. When a person's strength does not reach a certain level, he can only be used as a pawn by more powerful people. He is not even worthy of the right to know. Just like when Odin arranged the super plan called Asgard Collapse Plan, with Loki in order to train Thor to be a qualified heir to the throne of Asgard. Even Loki himself is not sure whether he will be a higher-level powerhouse when he travels to this world and uses him as a pawn to play against others. Pressing down the inexplicable worry in his heart, Loki shook his head and thought to himself, being able to become someone else's chess piece means that at least I still have value. Now that I can't break free from this chessboard, I can only try my best not to let it go. Become the outcast yourself. Chapter 204, Part 1. With Strange's current strength and magic level, it is absolutely impossible to defeat Wanda, who has completely mastered origin magic power. However, Wanda is not really out of control, and Strange also has the Eye of Agamotto, a plugin that can loop time infinitely. Therefore, even with the disparity in strength between the two sides, Strange still maintained the stalemate. After the time was almost up, Ancient One saw that the expectation of training Strange had been achieved, so he took the initiative to show up and stop the confrontation. This artificially designed, out-of-control rampage naturally cannot allow Strange to accept his mission directly like Dormammu in the original plot of 163. But at least a seed has been initially planted in Strange's heart, allowing him to understand the meaning of Kamar-Taj and Sorcerer Supreme. And as Strange mastered the use of the Eye of Agamotto, Goucher was certain that Chili would one day be unable to help but use time magic to spy on the possibilities on the future timeline. When the time comes to see the truth in the universe, with Strange's hard-spoken and soft-hearted character, in order to protect the one he loves, will he still refuse to inherit the position of Sorcerer Supreme of the Ancient One? Strange is still too young. No matter how smart he is, if he wants to compete with an old monster like the Ancient One who has lived for thousands of years, there is no way he can beat the Ancient One. Not to mention Strange, even Odin, an old man who is even more ancient than the Ancient One, is actually not willing to deal with the Ancient One except for necessary communication between the 9 kingdoms, because he is worried that he will not pay attention. I was tricked by the slippery guy Ancient One. That is to say, only Loki, who is a god of trickery, can take advantage of his relationship with the Ancient One. However, even Loki has had the experience of suffering at the hands of the Ancient One. Now the affairs of the twins Pietro and Wanda, as well as Strange, the heir to the Sorcerer Supreme, have come to an end for the time being. On Midgard, since Shield began to carry out the annihilation operation against Hydra, Loki found that he, a fun-loving person, could find less and less fun. In order to find new fun, Loki left Kamar-Taj after saying goodbye to everyone. He also left Midgard and set his sights on the universe again. Loki recalled the plots of Marvel movies in his past life, and found that the only 2 villains that could arouse his interest were Thanos and Hela. As an eternal titan, Thanos is undoubtedly extremely powerful. This can be seen from the original plot that Thanos was able to beat the Hulk to the point of autism without relying on the power of infinite gems. However, with Loki's current strength, Thanos alone is definitely not enough. Loki is not only interested in Thanos, but also the huge dark army behind him. As the saying goes, quantity is not enough for quality, and Thanos plus all his men and soldiers can barely satisfy Loki's need for fun. As for Hela, the situation is special compared to Thanos. If you don't count the cheating skills that Loki obtained from the system, purely in terms of strength, Hela at his peak was just like Loki in the later stages of Level Godfather. Definitely, after Odin sealed it for thousands of years, Hela is definitely no longer as strong as she was at her peak. Odin continues to age over time, and his current strength has almost declined to the level of the early Level Godfather. Judging from this point, since Hela was able to break through Odin's seal and escape, her remaining strength is at least between the early and middle stages of Level Godfather. But what makes Hela special is that not only is she Odin's biological daughter and Loki's nominal sister, but as long as Hela stands on the land of Asgard, she can connect to the world tree through Asgard, thereby gaining a steady stream of huge magic power. From this point of view, Hela is definitely a difficult opponent for Loki to defeat. First of all, as Hela's nominal brother, Loki definitely cannot use certain killing skills such as Eye of Death. Otherwise, neither Loki's own reputation nor Odin's face would be able to survive. Then there is Hela's ability to connect to the world tree with the help of Asgard. With such an ability, it is no wonder that Hela has become the death god, who can follow Odin to conquer the 9 realms in 1.7 at a young age. No matter how seriously injured Hela was during the battle, as long as he returned to Asgard, he could immediately recover and return to his peak condition with the help of the power of the world tree. If Hela was based on Asgard, she would be immortal and her magic power would never run out. But it's interesting to have such a challenging opponent, isn't it? Loki muttered to himself, with an excited smile on his lips. Chapter 205, Part 1. Asgard, as the political center among the 9 realms, is also the most powerful existence. It seems that nothing can ever cause any waves in this pure land. Today's Asgard is as peaceful as ever. The civilians enjoy the tranquility, while the soldiers stick to their duties. But Loki knew clearly that beneath this seemingly calm surface, a storm capable of destroying everything was actually brewing quietly. In the Asgard Hall, Odin dismissed the surrounding guards and looked with burning eyes at Loki, who was standing face to face in front of him. Now there are only two of us left. What do you want to tell me when you come back today? You should be able to tell me now. Looking at Odin's old face and gray beard and hair, Loki said something that was completely beyond Odin's expectations. Father King 07, if I am not wrong, your end should be coming soon, right? Odin looked at the adopted son in front of him in disbelief, but he soon felt relieved and nodded in response. Yes, it should have happened in the past few years. However, next, Loki said something that shocked Odin even more. Father, I would like to ask you to lift the seal imposed on my eldest sister. What? I want to ask you, Father, to lift the seal on my eldest sister. Loki repeated again. Odin was silent for a while, then regained his composure and asked Loki, how did you know about this? Father, don't worry about how I know it. Your current physical condition simply does not allow you to continue to maintain the seal on eldest sister. Instead of consuming your own vitality just to delay the time for so many years, it is better to seal eldest sister earlier. Let him go and give himself a few decades to enjoy his retirement life with his mother. Hearing Loki mention the god queen Frigga, Odin couldn't help but pause. He recalled that over the thousands of years since he became the god king of Asgard, he had thought a lot about Asgard and the entire 9 realms. Little thought was given to his wife and family. Said there were even many times when Frigga would take the initiative to make sacrifices and take on responsibilities that she shouldn't have to bear because she was thinking about him. So in Odin's heart, he always felt that he was very ashamed of Frigga. How much do you know about Hela? Are you sure that you will be able to suppress her? You have to know that if I really unlock Hela's seal, and you cannot suppress Hela, then the result will be not only Asgard, but also other countries in the 9 realms. You will suffer. And this is not something you need to bear. Loki shook his head. I don't want to take any responsibility on myself. Didn't you see that I don't even bother to take care of Jotunheim's affairs now? I just have nothing to do, and want to have some fun for myself. I also want to show my filial piety so that my father, you, can enjoy your old age in peace. As for Hela, it's not that I look down on her, it's just that you, my father, have declined to this state, and she hasn't been able to break through the seal you set. So it seems that she can never be my opponent. Odin, the little baby has now grown up enough to be alone. Time flies so fast. You are right, Loki. It is time for me to spend some time with your mother. Hearing Odin finally relented, Loki also said happily, that's right. Leave Hela's affairs to me. Father, when the time comes, you will give the throne to Thor directly, and then enjoy life with your mother. Don't think about that. Many. In this way, except for Odin and Loki in the hall, no one else in Asgard knew that a major event that might trigger Ragnarok was decided. And Loki returned to Earth after leaving Asgard, because the place where Odin sealed Hela was on Earth. This is not because Odin has any objections to the Earth. He likes to throw everything on the Earth. Part of the reason why Odin chose the Earth as Hela's sealing place was the same as when he hid the Tesseract 750 in Tunsberg, which was to use the Earth's extremely low presence in the universe to hide it from others. Definitely, with the changes of the times, today's Earth is no longer the small and transparent one it used to be, and has even become a conspicuous package. In addition, the most important purpose of Odin's choice to seal Hela on the Earth is actually to cut off the link between Hela and the World Tree. As mentioned before, Hela is able to connect to the World Tree through Asgard, thus gaining endless power. Sealing Hela on the Earth will naturally cut off this link. At the same time, the defensive barrier left by Agamotto for the Earth can effectively isolate the energy of various dark dimensions from the Earth, making Hela unable to obtain other sources of magic power, and its own power will be continuously destroyed over a long period of time. Consumption. Chapter 206, Part 1. Standing on a cliff on the coast of Norway, this is the place where the surviving Asgardians established a new Asgard on Earth after Ragnarok in the original plot. However, now that Loki has intervened in the so-called Ragnarok matter, it is still unclear what the future will be like. Loki stretched out his hand toward the sky and made an "okay" gesture. This was a signal to Heimdall far away in Asgard. Not long after Loki's signal was sent, a door to another dimension appeared in front of him, and from behind the door of this space, a thick and strange aura of death emitted, making Loki feel a little uncomfortable. The next second, a slender figure wearing a black tights appeared from the door, but her slightly pale skin and unusually messy long hair gave Loki the first feeling not of charm, but of madness. Who are you? Are you appearing in front of me at this time to welcome me, the new queen of Asgard, back to my kingdom? Looking at Loki appearing in front of her, Hela did not show any fear out of confidence in her own strength, or in other words, her former strength. She just stood in front of Loki very casually, her tone full of contempt. Goddess of death Hela, my sister. I am Loki Odinson, the second prince of Asgard and the current king of Jotunheim. If you don't mind, you can call me His Majesty the King. As for the throne of Asgard, our father he hasn't passed away yet. Sister, please stop joking. Hela is proud. Loki is even prouder than her. An antique that has been sealed for thousands of years, and is Loki's nominal sister. Loki can forgive her for her rude words, but he will not embarrass himself. Impossible. After hearing Loki's words, Hela's laziness and casualness disappeared instantly, and she screamed at the top of her lungs. I don't feel any trace of Odin's blood in you at all. Are you fooling me? And if Odin is not dead, how could the seal he imposed on me disappear? Faced with Hela's doubts, Loki's response was very simple. Well, I am adopted. As for why the seal on your body disappeared, it's because I couldn't bear to see my father carrying such a heavy burden at such an old age, so I discussed it with him. Asked him to let you out. The result is also obvious. Father agreed. So you came out? Nonsense. Do you think I will believe your nonsense? Humph. No matter who you are, I will kill your kid now, and then return to Asgard in person. Then I will naturally know the truth. After Hela finished speaking, she stretched out her hands to touch her messy long hair, and a hair crown full of chilling air appeared on her head, gathering all the messy hair. Although the two black daggers were powerful, they were unable to cause any harm to Loki, who was already hiding between reality and reality. As soon as the words fell, Hela's hands turned out to be void creations, and two black daggers appeared directly, and she lightly threw them in the direction of Loki. It was only then that Hela, who had always been very strong, finally started to pay attention to Loki, and the murderous look in her eyes became more intense. Hela, who was not aware of the effect of flower in the mirror, water, and moon, only thought that Loki was hiding in the void. What was in front of her was an illusion projected by Loki from the void. Dinyu Ohio. In an instant, two black daggers shot towards Loki's head and heart like two cannonballs. When they passed through Loki's body, they were like two stones falling into the lake. They only made some splashes and ripples, but there was no movement at all. But Loki still stood there unharmed, looking at Hela with a smile. His expression seemed to say, if you have any other means, use it quickly. Your move is similar to that of a guy named Aizen, who uses hairspray. Loki praised. The dagger that tore apart the space did not cause any damage to Loki. The two black daggers passed through Loki's phantom as before and made no move. However, Loki had already anticipated that Hela would go crazy and was ready to use mirror flower water before sending a signal to Asgard. Whatever you hairspray hand, you dare to fool me, the goddess of death, return to the arms of death, boy. Chapter 207, Part 1. My dear father, I never thought we would meet again. Asgard. In the Asgard Hall, Hela, standing under Odin's throne, looked at the god king sitting on the throne, her tone still so arrogant and confident. If it weren't for the fact that she was now tightly entangled by the heavenly locks, she would have been thought to be the one with the advantage. Since Hela's fate was to be entangled by the heavenly locks and sent to Odin, then the outcome of her battle with Loki is self-evident. I never thought that before I died, I would be able to see you again, my daughter Hela. Odin looked at Hela with a very complicated expression. On the one hand, Hela is his daughter, so it is absolutely impossible for Odin to have no emotion in his heart. But on the other hand, due to his failure in educating Hela, Hela was swallowed up by her own power and desire, and became a fallen goddess who took killing as her pleasure. Odin, who was both Hela's father and the king of Asgard, discovered this problem too late and could only make a difficult choice between the peace of Asgard and the freedom of his daughter Hela. In the end, Odin stuck to his true heart as the god king, assumed the responsibility as the king of Asgard, endured the grief in his heart, and sealed Hela into the different dimension of Midgard. I said, how could you be willing to let me go? I thought you were dead, but I didn't expect that you picked up a bastard from nowhere and relied on an outsider to bully me. Boom. The unconvinced Hela had just finished speaking. Loki, who had been standing behind her watching the show, heard the other party mentioning him and calling him a bastard, so he kicked Hela in front of Odin. Hela didn't expect that Loki would dare to attack her in front of Odin. Unexpectedly, he was kicked directly by Loki and lost her balance. The pale and evil face was directly in contact with the hardness of the hall. The ground came up for a close encounter. Keep your mouth clean. If you dare to trick me again, I will show him in front of my father how you became my defeated enemy before. After being threatened by Loki, Hela became more honest. Bound by the heavenly locks, she could only crawl up from the ground. Although his eyes were full of resentment towards Loki and Odin, he didn't dare to say anything more. Father, now that I have brought her back to you, what do you want to do with her? Before returning to Asgard, I had already severed the connection between her and Asgard, so even if I stand on Asgard's side from now on the ground, she will no longer be able to obtain any blessings from the Force testicles. The means that Loki talks about are naturally a Hage, the devil eye of direct death. After being killed by Loki and losing the plugin that connects to the world tree through Asgard, Hela wants to regain her original peak strength in the future, or even continue to become stronger. Then she can only practice step by step like everyone else, or wait for the magic power slowly improves with age. After hearing Loki's question, Odin pondered for a moment and then said, Hela, although you have committed unforgivable and heinous crimes, now after thousands of years of imprisonment, you have been treated as you deserve. Punishment. Now that you have regained your freedom, you should assume your responsibility as the goddess of death. As the king of Asgard and the ruler of the 9 realms, I declare that from now on you are the queen of the underworld and the ruler of the kingdom of death. Loki, let Heimdall send Hela to the underworld. Without my active summons, no one can activate Bifrost to take her back to Asgard. Odin's decision is actually equivalent to actively exiling Hela. The title of Queen of the Underworld sounds very majestic, but the underworld is a country that only the undead can reach, an extremely cold place without any light. Although Odin couldn't bear to execute his daughter with his own hands, he would not let her exist to destroy the hard one piece and stability of the 9 realms. Definitely, if Thor can grow up smoothly in the future and completely surpass Hela, the goddess of death, in strength, then Hela will not miss the day to return to Asgard. This can be regarded as the glimmer of life that Odin, as a father, left to Hela, his daughter. Chapter 208, Part 1. Titan, the former Titan. Thanos was born and raised on this planet, and eventually became a psychopathic family planning captain. Loki came here today not to remember the past prosperity of this planet, but to have a duel as promised, a duel between one person and one army. The target of Loki's duel is Thanos and his army of darkness. After solving Hela's matter, Loki turned his attention to Thanos. After using the cosmic communicator to get in touch with the opponent, Loki didn't make any harsh remarks, and went straight to the point and stated that he wanted to have a duel with the opponent. Naturally, Thanos will not give in. Loki is provoking him. If Thanos avoids fighting, how will he be able to rule the 4 obsidian generals and the soldiers under his command in the future? So after some discussions, the 2 sides decided that the venue for this decisive battle would be Thanos' former hometown, Titan. Loki came here early through the portal, not because he wanted to set up any traps in advance, but because he thought that Thanos, as the most powerful villain boss in the Marvel movies he had watched in his previous life, could finally fight with him. Fighting, my heart was agitated and I couldn't wait to come to Titan. Looking at the desolate Titan now, it is hard to imagine that a prosperous and powerful civilization once existed here. But then I thought about it. If he hadn't taken action in advance to prevent Ragnarok from happening, Asgard's fate would actually be even more tragic than the eternal Titan civilization. After all, the ruins on Titan still prove how great this civilization once was, but in the original fate line, Asgard will be completely destroyed by Surti. Not even the foundation is left. While Loki was thinking wildly, time passed quickly, and Thanos and his army arrived as promised, appearing in front of the space jump point outside Titan. Suddenly, a brilliant beam of light fell from the battleship in the sky, and as the beam gradually disappeared, a tall purple figure finally appeared in front of Loki's eyes. You're finally here, Thanos. Loki looked at the purple figure in front of him and said leisurely, Loki Odin. Thanos also spit out Loki's name, and from the caution and fear in his eyes, it can be concluded that he must have collected Loki's information before coming and conducted detailed analysis. Loki's undefeated record is placed in front of Thanos, asking Thanos how to deal with it without caution. Fortunately, this battle was not equal from the beginning. Loki clamored to fight one against many, but Thanos definitely didn't want to talk about a fair fight, so he happily agreed. It just so happened that he could take advantage of the numerical advantage and let his soldiers test Loki's strength and methods first. After figuring out Loki's background, Thanos can target Loki's weaknesses and launch a thunderous strike to win the victory. It has to be said that if Thanos had not been so ruthless to reach this point, he would have been plotted to death by his enemies. However, it was a bit naive for him to want to deal with Loki with the same tactics he used to deal with enemies in the past. How can Loki's strength be comparable to the enemies Thanos has encountered before? That is to say, Thanos did not find out that even the gods Ego and Dormammu were defeated by Loki. Otherwise, even if he risked the rebellion of the Dark Army, even with the risk, Thanos will definitely refuse this fight. But it's too late to say anything now. The thousands of troops of the Dark Legion, on Titan, have already held the weapons in their hands and rushed towards Loki, who was standing alone on the battlefield with 10 people. Zero, please give me flowers. But what happened in the next second shocked Thanos and the other generals who were still on the battleship. Loki just waved his sleeves at the soldiers who were charging towards him, and a powerful cold air quickly shot out from Loki's sleeves, and in the blink of an eye it had passed through the entire military formation. All the warriors who were contaminated by the cold air emitted by Loki, without exception, maintained their charging posture just now and turned into snow-white ice sculptures. Those flying in the sky were in a worse situation. They fell directly from the sky and fell into a pile of ice slag. After Loki finished dealing with these cannon fodder, the next target was naturally placed on the huge amounts of battleship above Titan. The Devil Eye of Direct Death was turned on, and as Loki swung out a sword energy with the ice blade in his hand, Thanos' lifelong assets were killed by Loki in an instant, and he suddenly changed from an arrogant warlord in the universe to god of broken settlement. But Thanos doesn't need to worry about how he will spend his future retirement life, because Loki did not let him go like he did Hela. In the end, the purple sweet potato spirit did not escape the fate of turning into a ball of ashes, but it was not wiped out by the infinite gems, but was crushed to ashes by Loki. Once this person is too strong, he will really feel lonely. Is this the so-called cold at high places? I can understand why Saitama-sensei became like that after he became bald. I wonder if that so-called Kong can bring me some fun? Loki thought, drew a portal in front of him, and stepped into it. Finished with flowers. Chapter 209, Part 1. After dealing with Thanos, Loki, who was unable to contact Kong the Conqueror for the time being, decided to sort out his own power again and improve his strength. In the memory of Loki's previous life, Loki can be said to be the biggest villain in works related to Thor. Whether in movies or comics, Loki has always been against his Thor. Sometimes, the swollen Loki even dares to confront him, fight against Odin. But from the plot at the beginning of Avengers 3, it is certain that Loki is not bad in nature. The reason why he is called the god of mischief and the god of lies is that he is actually ignored among the Nordic gods. All eyes are focused on Thor, the son of the god king. After all, he is the son of Odin. And Loki is just adopted, and still has the 840 blood of Lauf, the king of giants of Jotunheim. This embarrassing situation caused Loki's character to become distorted in those story versions, and after being exposed to black magic, he became more and more inextricable. Although Loki is known as the god of lies, and the bloodline of the giants of Jotunheim is theoretically more powerful than the Nordic gods, he is the weakest among the giants of Jotunheim tribe, because he lost the powerful physique of the giant family and was born with becoming shorter and thinner. But just like the sky and the curse in the Battle of Spells, Fuhishir completely abandoned the power of spells and gained an unparalleled powerful body and supermotor ability, and his 5 senses were also greatly improved. With his ultimate sense of touch, smell, and hearing, he can feel the movement of the cursed spirit without relying on sight. Although he cannot harm the cursed spirit without any spell tools, he still has a strong combat effectiveness against magicians. Loki is actually the same, but at the cost of losing his strong body, Loki has awakened something far more powerful than strength, wisdom. It's just like the power of thunder hidden in Thor's body. Without the guidance of a wise elder like Odin, or the active awareness of his own ability, it would be difficult to activate this potential. So in some ways, the god of lies is not a power, but more like a curse for Loki, because he can't always suppress his desire to lie. But everything in this world has 2 sides. The power of the god of lies can curse and bind Loki, and it can definitely be used by Loki to become his most powerful force. The key to all this is that Loki can inspire his true wisdom and break through his own shackles and limits. Coincidentally, as a very popular character in the Marvel Universe, he has seen many comic story explanations about Loki in his previous life. Among them is the story of Loki becoming a multi-universe level powerhouse. In that story, Loki tried his best to cast his image as the god of evil, but because of his title as the god of lies, he could not gain the true trust of others no matter how hard he struggled. In such a desperate situation, Loki, with the help of his best friend, finally realized the essence of lies. The essence of lies is stories and nothing more. People will make up all kinds of stories in order to satisfy themselves and please themselves. This has been the case since ancient times. Even myths are just made-up stories. Before all kinds of advanced technologies were created, those primitive humans living in the barbaric era did not know where the storm came from, what lightning was, or when the disaster would strike. Stop. Faced with these unknown fears, people at that time relied on lies or stories to dispel the fear in their hearts. Gods were born from such stories, and then were passed down orally by humans, eventually becoming myths. Now, what Loki has to do is, just like Loki in the comic story, to understand the nature of himself and lies, to transcend the identity given to him by the outside world in the past, and to become the god of stories in a multi-universe level existence. Even if the universe is destroyed, Loki can save life from destruction by keeping a part of the story somewhere.
Thanks for watching. This marks the end of the series, as I've caught up to the author. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you'd like to support future content, consider joining me on Patreon. Your support means a lot. The link is in the description. If you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. Feel free to drop a comment.